Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I wanted to share this story with you that recently happened. It is very sad. Jason Arday was Cambridge University, their youngest Black professor in the history of the university. This is in London, England, and he recently had to resign, and they found him unalived. Well, by committing SUA, you know what, just days later. So, from what I'm hearing, he had resigned because they're saying that there was a smear campaign against him. This is over in the UK because there were some people who might have been jealous of him who said that he plagiarized some of his work. Now, there was an investigation where they found that he really didn't plagiarize anything. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but he ended up resigning. And this has sparked a conversation about bullying, about people of color being in high positions and people trying to sabotage you, being jealous of you, to knock you down. And some people are saying, oh no, he did plagiarize. Then other people are saying that's absolutely not true. I believe he had wrote a book and it just was unbearable. He had accomplished a lot. He got awards, doctorates, and everything like that. And he made history. He was climbing and climbing and climbing. And then he lost what he worked for, and it became unbearable for him. And now he's no longer here on the planet. So I want to share some videos from the public, what they're saying about what happened to him. From what I know, he's from London, England. He was just 41 years old. He is the son of Ghanaian parents from Ghana, but he was raised and born in London, England. He overcame some adversity in his life to get to where he is, and he worked hard. And he became the youngest Black professor in history of Cambridge, which is a very, very famous university slash college. And now he's no longer here on the earth. And it's just a damn shame. I want them to do an investigation to see if anybody was emailing him and harassing him and bullying him before or after when he had to resign. And because that probably led up to this and it affected his mental health clearly. So let's get into it. Check out these videos about what people are saying about it.
I'm so angry right now, I'm shaking. I just heard from MP Belle Ribeiro Addy, who is the MP of Jason Arday and his family. And she's just informed me that the British media are harassing Jason Arday's grieving family. They're hounding them at home, reporting from outside their home. They've actually reported the road of his house, and they're hounding family members for comments. Like, have they not done enough? Are these people mad? Jason Arday has children. What the actual hell? Are you trying to kill his children like you killed their father? Are you people mad? Have you no compassion? What the actual hell? Have you not done enough? You hounded and smeared Jason Arday to death, and now you're doing to his family? Get the fuck away from Jason Arday's family. Get the fuck away from Jason Arday's home. Get the fuck away from Jason Arday's children now. How freaking dare you? Are you mad? I want the names of the bloody journalists, the photographers, whatever freaking TV or radio station that's participating in this monstrosity. I swear to God, we are not mad enough. Get the fuck away from them now.
This is 41-year-old Jason Arday. A few days ago, he was found dead at his home. He was a professor at Cambridge University. He was accused of plagiarism, then hounded by the British media with an astonishing 249 articles in 22 days. Jason resigned, saying he had reached the limits of what any person should reasonably be expected to endure. 188 of those 249 articles came after he resigned and said this. 9 days later, he was dead. But Jason's death also confirms what many Black people in the UK already know. The society is outrageously institutionally racist, and the media is one of the hammers used to maintain that framework. Pay Pay attention. The day Jason died, 1:01 a.m., the Mail runs a psychiatrist speculating about a condition that might explain him, a psychiatrist who had never met him. 3:11 p.m., the Telegraph publishes another piece contesting Jason's account of his own childhood. 1 minute later, at 3:12 p.m., the ambulance is called to his address. 6:12 p.m., the Times publishes a column mocking him. Jason is already dead. 8:40 p.m., the Times publishes his obituary. Wow. In 2023, Jason became the youngest black professor in Cambridge's 800-year history. I hate saying that because blackness isn't some handicap to be overcome. Almost immediately came the cries of DEI and wokeism. This is Nathan Kofnas, a self-described race realist who left Cambridge in 2024 after arguing that in a meritocracy, black people would disappear from almost every high-profile position outside sports and entertainment. His July blog post attacking Jason lit the fire. Then the Telegraph published an article titled "Cambridge's Diversity Poster Boy in Plagiarism Row." They knew that was like throwing raw meat to ravenous racists across the country. I'm not saying I know Jason was innocent. Fine, investigate him. Fire him if necessary. But the plagiarism was just the excuse. They went after his books, his visiting professorships, his marathons, his charity work, his childhood, his autism. They chose the target first, then built the case against him. This is William O'Reilly, a Cambridge associate professor found to have plagiarized his own undergraduate student. You ever heard of him? Did journalists investigate his childhood, his health, his entire life? I don't care whether Jason Arday was guilty. Academic misconduct deserves academic consequences, but the British press turned a black man into the centerpiece of a national anti-DEI witch hunt. And to the journalists who participated in this, white and black, you should spend the rest of your careers and lives in infamy, but I'm sure you'll sleep well at night. You need to have a soul not to. Jason, your life mattered and society failed you. Rest in peace.
Jason Arday is dead at 41 years old. And before the British tabloid press moves on to their next victim, we need to talk about what they did to this man. Jason Arday was a black British sociologist who became the youngest black person ever appointed to a professorship at Cambridge. His rise should have been extraordinary. Then came the allegations of plagiarism and questions about parts of his biography, and the British press ruthlessly and viciously went after him. And so did their readers. They didn't stop with academic allegations. They started pulling apart his entire life, his career, his accomplishments, his fundraising, his athletic achievements, his personal history, story after story, headline after headline. Meanwhile, Jason was already dealing with racist abuse and threats. People close to him said the relentless negative coverage was causing him profound distress. His friend and colleague, Professor Sir Simon Baron-Cohen, spoke with him shortly before his death and described just how badly he was struggling with what was happening. Then Jason Arday was found dead. He was 41. His family said that the prolonged abuse, harassment, and misinformation took a devastating toll on him. Lord Simon Woolley called what happened to Jason a toxic, vicious witch hunt. And he has called for an investigation into the media's conduct. And here's where the British press needs to take accountability, because Jason Arday wasn't the only Cambridge academic caught up in plagiarism allegations. William O'Reilly, a white Cambridge associate professor, had a plagiarism complaint against him actually upheld by the university. More than 12 pages of published articles were reportedly taken almost word for word from essays written by one of his own undergraduate students. Cambridge determined his conduct negligent rather than deliberate. He kept his job. The British press? Crickets. Additional allegations involving other publications later surfaced. Now compare the coverage. Did you see the British tabloid press digging through every corner of William O'Reilly's life? Did you see his accomplishments turned into national headlines? Did you see relentless public humiliation? Because not a single person saw anything resembling nearly what happened to Jason Arday. Let's call out the difference. Jason Arday was black. William O'Reilly is white. Britain has a long overdue conversation to have about the way their tabloid culture treats people, particularly black people and other people of color who become targets. We've watched the British press do this before. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, immediately comes to mind. We have watched years of relentless coverage directed at Meghan while she was publicly discussed, reaching a point where she didn't want to be alive anymore. Caroline Flack, who sadly took her life, was another victim of British tabloid bullying. Human beings have limits. The British tabloids are to blame for Jason's death, and their consumers are complicit. Do you think Jason Arday would have been subjected to the same relentless media pylon if he had been a white Cambridge professor? And that's the read. If you like your tea hot, share it, save your seat, and follow for more. This is the Notorious JTB, notoriously opinionated, signing out.
My name is Jason Arday. I'm Professor of Sociology of Education at the University of Cambridge. I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. I learned to speak just before the age of 12, so I was 11.
And my brethren, nibs, class clowns, chatty patty, all the time, bro. What do you mean you was a mute?
I learned to read and write when I was 18 years of age.
It's not one lie, it's not two, it's not small lies, it's massive lies on every piece of his origin story and biography.
12 years after learning to read and write, I gained a PhD, and then I ended up becoming one of the youngest professorial chairs in Cambridge's history.
No apology, just playing the victim. You're
Chatty patty.
Some of his academic writing and lying about claims he ran 600 miles in 6 days to raise money for
30 marathons in 35 days. And by the way, I was actually looking into it. He alleged that on the 21st day, he fell and broke his leg, but managed to complete the next 9 marathons on a broken leg.
Yeah. This is a story of corruption, of people who knew the truth and covered it up.
It's bait. You should have known it was going to be peak for you, bro. You should have known they were going to dig up. No one don't want to see you in that position. Joke, man. This got us looking mad now. Got us looking mad.
I want to tell you about some breaking news coming out of the UK. Jason Arday, who made history as one of Cambridge University's youngest ever black professors, has been found dead. Now, chances are you haven't been following this story, but I think you need to know. And so I'm going to bring you up to speed right now because all of this is unfolded incredibly quickly. Arday's career had become engulfed in controversy following a series of allegations of plagiarism and claims that he misrepresented parts of his resume. The scrutiny became so intense, with some of his supporters describing the criticism as a right-wing smear campaign. After all the mounting public pressure, Arday resigned from Cambridge last week. And now, just days later, police say the 41-year-old was found unresponsive in South London and pronounced dead at the scene. There is speculation surrounding the circumstances of his death, but authorities have not publicly stated or confirmed the cause. So it's an extraordinary and deeply tragic turn in a story that has unfolded in a matter of days. We will keep you updated. This story will make its way across the pond to the United States. Trust me.
Professor Jason Arday. I have not been able to stop thinking about him, and my soul is genuinely hurting. I want to say that as an intersectional scholar, I am fully aware that much of his treatment by the media and society, even in psychologists, was driven by race. And that's not something I can personally speak on, obviously, other than wholeheartedly condemning all of it. I can speak from the place of an autistic academic in the UK who is also a systems critical scholar. Professor Arday was a Black autistic man whose work was literally about racism, inequity, and power. One of the people who propelled the allegations against him into the public sphere was white supremacist Nathan Coffness. I don't care if I say his name wrong. He argued that in a true meritocracy, the number of Black professors at Harvard would be basically 0. And while discussing Professor Arday, joked about himself being the head of eugenics and racial science at Harvard. Somehow, Professor Arday is the one that the media viciously attacked. What does that say about where our society is right now? That makes me absolutely furious. And then psychologists and therapists joined in. That makes me even more furious as an autistic practicing psychologist myself. They publicly speculated about personality disorders, had stigmatizing conversations about autism. They talked about narcissism, grandiosity, entitlement, the power of victimhood, and just fuck off. This is an insane breach of ethical conduct. Professional language doesn't change ethical breaches. It just makes it harder for the public and the media to discern. There is a reason that Pathologization is so powerful. If you can convince everyone that the problem is within the person, you don't have to actually examine what is happening to them. Suddenly, no one has to look at the environments at all, which is unbearingly ironic because Professor Arday spent his career asking us to look at the system. The history of Western approaches to autism specifically is tangled with eugenics, racial hygiene, and our society loves to pretend that this type of thinking has completely disappeared. Meanwhile, in 2026, race science is back in public conversation. Mental health professionals are publicly pathologizing a Black autistic professor in the middle of a racialized media storm. And then we solemnly discuss the high rates of suicide among autistic individuals as if that problem inexplicitly lives within the autistic brain. It doesn't. Maybe we should look at how autistic people are actually treated. Professor Jason Arday spent his career trying to make institutions kinder to the people that those institutions excluded and harmed. There is just something so cruel about watching that being flipped back around on him. He kept telling us to look at the system. Maybe we should listen to him.
After the revolution, I'll be the head of the Department of Eugenics and Race Science at Harvard, maybe.
This is the aggrieved and fragile man who instigated a smear campaign against Dr. Jason Arday. His name is Nathan Kofnas. He's an American academic who received his undergraduate degree from Columbia University, his master's at Cambridge, and his DPhil or PhD from Oxford. He then joined Cambridge again as a fellow in the Department of Philosophy in 2022. A year later, in 2023, Dr. Jason Arday is appointed a professor at Cambridge, making him the university's youngest Black professor at the age of 37. The next year, in 2024, Kofnas is fired from Cambridge, although his website says he was a fellow there until 2025, so there's a discrepancy. Why was Kofnas fired? Well, he wrote that if we lived in a meritocracy, then Black people would disappear from all high-profile positions outside of sports and entertainment. Even before he became a fellow at Cambridge, he was espousing these views and publishing widely on them. Just take a look at this 2020 paper that was published in the journal Philosophical Psychology. It's titled Research on Group Differences in Intelligence, a Defense of Free Inquiry. In the paper, he defends hereditarianism, which says that there are supposed genetic IQ differences between so-called racial groups. Kofnas says that researchers ignored this so-called science because of moral reservations. That is not the reason. The reason is because this is shoddy so-called science. That same year, researchers publish a rebuttal in the same journal. They say that the manuscript fails to meet a range of academic quality standards usually expected of academic publications, and they list these in detail. But it doesn't matter because the paper was still published, it's not been retracted, it's not revised, it's still there. And while Kofnas may have lost his position at Cambridge, he landed a job at the University of Ghent in Belgium. Of course, he's not alone in his eugenicist agenda. Meet David Starkey, the shamed British historian who was dropped by his publisher and resigned from Cambridge in 2020. Starkey said, "Slavery was not genocide, otherwise there wouldn't be so many damn Blacks in Africa or in Britain, would there? An awful lot of them survived."
A hero who brought down the monster of DEI at Cambridge. Nathan?
To people like Kofnas and Starkey, if they can't have a job at Cambridge, then someone who looks like Jason Arday certainly cannot.
Is this what's happened if you don't give Kofnas a job, right?
But here's what happens in response to him triggering a smear campaign. This video is too long. Check out part 2.
Am I getting this right? Our entire political machine had to go after Jason Arday with a force that he literally could not survive, because if there was even a chance that he might be undermining British academia and our universities in general, then they had to go after him with full force. Because they care so much about expertise and academics, right? from the same people that brought us.
I think the people in this country have had enough of experts.
Farage even once celebrated the idea that Brexit would mean less money for British universities.
One of the benefits of Brexit is that our universities will not be receiving any money from the European Union.
I mean, it's not like the same people who went the hardest against Jason Arday, supposedly on the grounds of how much they care about protecting the integrity of British academia, have spent the last 10 years specifically telling us to go against the experts, against the academics, whether that's on Brexit, lockdown, vaccines, climate change. I mean, if they actually cared at all about the principle of academic research, then they would listen to the fact that, as you've heard me say before, Oxford research shows that if you have a West African name, you have to send 80% more job applications to get a call back when you're applying for work. Which means the current status quo is a system that gives an unfair advantage to white people when it comes to applying for work. But it does mean two things, because if your issue is that you had to go after Jason Arday because he lied on his CV, then your issue is the notion of people who aren't that qualified getting jobs where there are better people that could take those jobs. But if you have a system that is literally skewed in favor of white people by 80%, then the system as it currently stands doesn't put the most qualified people into those roles. And so even if you can find individual black people who did lie on their CVs, that is the least of your concerns. And the second point, which I know the right won't care about because they don't have empathy for black people, but if you have a drop of empathy for black people, then you should know that if we know that under our current system, according to Oxford University research, even somebody with the same CV as me, if they are white, they are significantly more likely to be chosen by an employer, maybe you can understand why there might be a little bit more pressure on black people to embellish on their CVs just to level the playing field a bit. But for that, you would need to give a shit about black people, or at least university expertise, and the people who went after Dr. Jason Arday don't care about either.
Dear black people, I need your help. For what they did to Professor Jason Arday, using his picture day after day for irrelevant posts, hounding that man, we said the shade borough must go in the dustbin of history. And so far, they have lost tens of thousands of followers. I still need your help. Will you help me? They issue an apology. They admitted they did wrong, but it wasn't a proper apology. They have since deleted this apology. Will you help me? It wasn't just Professor Jason Arday. They find black people with visibility and they bring them down. They're hurting the black community. Will you unfollow them? They have now made their profile private. Find out who you know that still follows them. 52 people I know still follow them, and say, put the shade borough in the dustbin.
Jason Arday, the youngest ever black professor at Cambridge University, was found dead in his apartment in London on Friday. Between the two headlines, a story unfolded that is neither unique in the UK or unique to the UK. And right now we're at a vigil held in Arday's memory in Trafalgar Square in London, where Arday's friends, some of whom are MPs, journalists, activists, some of his students at Cambridge, and of course his family, made statements earlier.
The vicious media campaign drove him to his death. But it wasn't just a campaign against a professor, it was a campaign against all of us. All of us.
Every human life has a purpose. Imagine what might happen if we're all united in the just cause of valuing human beings equally.
But he said, they hounded me to death, and I cannot see a way out.
On July 21, Nathan Koffness, a researcher at Ghent University, wrote an expose on his personal Substack accusing Arday of plagiarism in his 2015 PhD thesis. That same thesis was cleared of plagiarism in 2025 by Liverpool John Moore University, the institution where Arday completed his PhD. Koffness still claimed that Arday copied passages of other people's work word for word without referencing the original writer. He would also cast doubt on parts of Arday's personal life story. The story would gain traction in the press. Koffness is a self-proclaimed race realist.
One of the points I make is that you don't understand what would happen if we actually had a colorblind meritocracy, where representation of certain groups, such as African Americans, would be decimated. It would fall, well, not just a reduction of 10%, but it would fall to 10% of what it is.
Cambridge University defended Arday at the time, relying on the LJMU investigation. But the story had already gone out of hand that the institution decided to launch its own investigation into his appointment. Arday would resign on August 5. And over the following 9 days, until his death, the media would dissect every part of his life. 249 articles, 188 of them in just 9 days, according to newscore.org. From mainstream media to right-leaning publications and even self-proclaimed leftist media. And in just 22 days, what began as an allegation of plagiarism had become a national debate over race, DEI, academic standards, and the treatment of black academics. The atmosphere here is one of mourning, but also deep anger at the media for its participation in what they call nothing less than a witch hunt. A question we've been hearing for the past several days is, was it worth it? This is not the first time a Cambridge University professor was accused of plagiarism. William O'Reilly was reported by his student in 2021 for copying his work, and after a 2-year investigation, Cambridge ruled it negligence. His story never made local headlines, let alone the global news cycle. The organizers keep reminding everybody this is a visual, not a protest, but they're also asking, until when?
Jason Arday was found dead just a few hours ago. This is how many stories the Daily Telegraph published about a young black academic in the UK accused of plagiarism, and they have made this into a massive culture war DEI story. They published 33 articles in 16 days. On some days, they published up to 4 articles. Here's a list of some of the outlets that I decided just to choose and see how many articles that they've written in the space of 2.5 weeks about a story about a young black academic who tonight has been found dead in Battersea in London. They haven't officially released the cause of death, and they've said that there's no foul play. People can make their own assumptions until the official statement comes out. But the Daily Telegraph, as I said, 33 articles. The Spectator, 30 articles in 2.5 weeks about a young black academic who's been accused of plagiarism. The Times, 41 articles. GB News, 15, but they don't publish as much written stuff. They mentioned him literally every hour on TV. Daily Mail takes the crown, 53. Of course, it's the Daily Mail. And the BBC, 15 times. Why has a story about a young black academic being accused of plagiarism, not even found guilty, from a story which originally was published by a guy on Substack who has previously been accused and actually had his relationship severed with certain organizations because he's promoted literally eugenic ideas about racial hierarchies and hereditary intelligence? That is the guy who originally broke this story on Substack, that there's possible plagiarism with this young black academic in Cambridge. And we've got this. We've got non-stop back-to-back coverage, everything on every social media platform, on every TV, right-wing media outlet, centrist media outlets. I've even seen The Guardian covering this multiple times. Why did it need this much attention? Really? With everything else going on in the world, it needed this much attention, and now a guy is dead. Right now, journalists are on social media defending their journalism, talking about public interest. I've seen plagiarism stories get covered before. One-day stories, they're forgotten. Okay, they are forgotten. Tell me why we've needed 2.5 weeks of some outlets publishing up to 4 articles a day on this story. It's because they're racist. It's because they're pushing the whole, everything that's wrong with the country is because of black and brown people, immigrants, and DEI. Nothing else. The country is literally on fire this week. We're running out of water. Our crops are half the size of what they should be. And there's so much stuff going on around the world. But this story has got more coverage than all of these topics. Consistently. Up to 4 articles a day, The Telegraph. Up to 4 articles in a single day. Why? Why? You know why.
Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to get over seeing the British press bully a black autistic man to death. This is probably one of the most harrowing things I feel like I've witnessed. And it hurts even more because if you are someone in the public eye, or you're someone who has been vocal, done any sort of activism, for me personally, I think a lot about like my student days and how sometimes that would basically leave you exposed to being hounded by the press, and how terrifying it is to feel unsafe, to feel worried, to feel like your life is over. It's a feeling I never want to experience ever again. It's a feeling that I remember explicitly saying at the time, I feel like they're not going to stop till I'm dead. And how much that transforms you. Seeing this unfold, honestly, has been so hard. When I first saw that story, I thought, oh, that's weird. And I kind of went on with my life. The level of vitriol he received, even just the level of coverage it received, was completely unwarranted. This was not a public interest story. Nobody anywhere truly cared. If anything, this was to do with Cambridge as an institution. It was down to them to worry about, to seek out any sort of information they needed, dish out any sort of punishment that was warranted. It was nothing to do with the entire country, even the world, weighing in on one man's story. It's really interesting to see that people are now backtracking on things that they said, deleting articles that have been posted. You know, even the Times are running ads about the story. This was a witch hunt. This was targeted abuse. And it was really, really, really disgusting to see. And now someone has died because of it. There's a huge racism problem in British media. I say this as someone who is a journalist, someone who writes stories, someone who is very much in that world. I've always been aware of the racism that exists. And this is one of the more particularly nasty manifestations of it. And I honestly don't even really know what to say. This did not have to happen at all. But I think it kind of serves as a reminder that as Black British people, there is a different rule for us. And we will truly never be safe. We will truly never be heard. And I think it is just like, oh, okay, in all of the times I think, oh, we've made so much progress, so much has changed. Something like this happens and you realize we are exactly where we started. And I send my condolences to his family, to his peers, to his colleagues, to everyone that ever loved him and knew him. And it's just devastating that this had to happen to Jason Arday. I mean, it didn't even have to happen.
I want to make sure people know Jason Arday wasn't the only Cambridge professor to have resigned this year. Simon Goldhill resigned this year, not for the crime of plagiarism, but rather, you know, the little thing of sexual assault allegations. That's why this man resigned. Have you heard about that in the news? Have you seen that covered? Bear in mind, Jason Arday was covered over 50 times by the Daily Mail, 33 times by the Telegraph, 40 plus times by the Times. I mean, when you look up Simon Goldhill, the first 4 articles are just about his work. Nothing to do with the fact he resigned in disgrace for sexual assault allegations. That it does not come up until the 5th article on the page. And yet the man who allegedly plagiarized was the one that the media decided was needing of hounding and hounding and hounding. And if you don't know who Simon Goldhill is, then I think that says everything you need to know, that a black man accused of plagiarism gets the demonic treatment that he received while a sexual assault allegation. Again, he resigned in disgrace, gets absolutely nothing.
What happened to Jason Arday is awful. Full stop. The end. There is no allegation of plagiarism that is worth anyone's life. There is no allegation of plagiarism that is worth anyone's harassment. And because of those unfounded allegations, a whole spiral of misinformation has ensued with weeks worth of harassment of this young, brilliant professor who was forced out of his role and then days later is dead. Now, I could talk about the way that allegations of plagiarism have never led to such a feeding frenzy as one that we just witnessed with Jason Arday. Typically, those stories go quietly into the night, and that it's very telling who the media, the British media specifically, decided to have a feeding frenzy upon. You know what? We could talk about DEI, and we probably should, because there's just too many people who believe that people who aren't cisgender, able-bodied, Christian, white, and male, that they don't deserve the roles that they have worked sometimes double, triple, quadruple the effort to get. But the conversation I think that we need to have is one about belonging, because for too long, bigots have occupied the conversation of who actually belongs. If someone is a DEI hire, if someone was hired because of affirmative action, if someone slept their way to the top, and so on and so forth. God forbid somebody just be qualified and not look like you, love like you, think like you, or be like you. There's a lot of people deleting articles and tweets and messages and all sorts of things around this Jason Arday situation, and that proves the point. It shows culpability. It shows how they contributed to the death of this young man. because innocent hands have no blood to clean. So the fact that there's articles being taken down, that there's people deleting their threads or their posts or their stories tells you everything that you need to know. Jason Arday should still be here. Allegations of plagiarism aren't worth harassment or anyone's life. And once again, bigotry will make you end up with blood all over your hands.
And now he's dead. He's dead. He's just been found dead. This hit me like a truck when I saw this news pop up on my phone. He's dead now. It hit me for a number of reasons. One, there was an element of guilt because I haven't spoken about this. I've shared other people's stuff, but haven't directly spoken about it because I didn't know the facts. Because by definition, the first inquiry that Cambridge did cleared him of plagiarism, and the second one's still ongoing. So don't know the facts, and I like to know the facts before I speak. But the one thing that I knew was true was the disproportionate level of backlash that he received, that Jason Arday received in the press over the accusations of plagiarism as a professor at Cambridge. So I knew that that was wrong. Similarly to like how the Meghan Markle stuff was wrong. You know, like how the Daily Mail and the Express would publish the exact same stories about Princess Kate, having avocados as like a pregnancy treat, and they'd praise it when Princess Kate did it, but when Kate Middleton did it, and then when Meghan Markle did it, they'd be like, "Oh, the avocados are linked to drought and murder." It's just that disproportionate level of hate that black prominent people get compared to their white counterparts. And ironically, I'm going to plagiarize here and use Jupiter Ball, is how you know him, my friend Helio. He made a video, which I actually accepted the collab on barely half an hour ago, where he named all of the white professors, a bunch of them, and academics who still are gainfully employed in academia, who've all been found to have committed plagiarism, and yet you don't know their names.
William O'Reilly, Anna Laura Wainwright, David Latchman, Ross Holmes, Fiona Leal, Nicola Morrison, Neil Wynne.
So while I don't know the nature of how he died, the likelihood that his death is unrelated to the fact his recent resignation is very, very low. And if it is in any way linked, racism killed Jason Arday. And that's why a lot of black people who are in some way prominent are feeling they are coming for all of us, because they don't want black people to have influence in this country. To his family, to his loved ones.
People don't actually understand that nothing was proven yet. There were 2 investigations against him. One of them cleared his name and the other one was still going. Despite him being under investigation and everything that was said against him were just allegations, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, more than 200 articles were written about him, even after he resigned. At what point is it a public interest to write about him even after his resignation? It's the fact that some of his peers still kept their jobs even after they were proven to have committed the same sin he was accused of. It's the fact that he has peers who resigned because of allegations way bigger than plagiarism, SA, and no one cared to cover that. Those people didn't even get 1% of the scrutiny that he got. It's the fact that he spoke about his mental health problems and how he was struggling, yet they kept hounding him until he died. And honestly, the most heartbreaking part is, who's going to hold those people accountable? And how are we going to make sure that what happened to him doesn't happen to someone else again? Something has to change systematically for this to be a lesson for everyone.
The way the press hounded Jason Arday in the last several weeks, you would have thought he committed a serious, maybe violent crime, like maybe he killed somebody, maybe he committed sexual assault. But what this man was accused of, accused being the key word there, was plagiarism and exaggeration about his personal life. The British press alone wrote over 200 articles about this man in the span of just a few weeks. And the reason is clear. It's because he was a Black autistic man who rose higher in society than they wanted him to. So they had to tear him down. And tear him down they did, because now the man is gone. As an academic, as a professor, I care deeply about upholding academic standards, but none of what happened to Jason Arday was about that. How do we know this is about race? Well, let's start with where the claims originated. They originated in a newsletter written by a man who calls himself a race realist. He himself had previously worked at Cambridge, which is where Jason Arday had been a professor until he resigned last week. We'll come back to that in a minute. The man who wrote this newsletter had lost his post at Cambridge after writing that in a meritocracy, Harvard faculty would be recruited from the best of the best students, which means the number of Black professors would approach 0%. Blacks would disappear from almost all high-profile positions outside of sports and entertainment. That is where this witch hunt started. And it's worth noting the institution that granted Jason Arday his PhD had already investigated claims of plagiarism and found that they were not substantiated. But let's talk about some other folks who have been accused of plagiarism, and let's even see if you knew who they were or that they had been accused of plagiarism. William O'Reilly, who was also a professor at Cambridge and was accused of stealing the writing of his students for like 12 pages of text. Mark Carney was accused of plagiarism in his thesis, which he obtained from Oxford. Did you know that he was accused of that? Rachel Reeves, a high-ranking politician in the UK, was accused of plagiarizing in her book. Matt Goodwin, a former academic turned politician, has published a book in which he has fabricated quotes, fabricated citations, and ChatGPT URLs. Some are calling him Matt GPT. I'm hoping you can piece together what the commonality is among these people and how they differ from Jason Arday. Under this immense pressure, Jason Arday resigned from his post last week, saying, "The years since my appointment have been marked by an unrelenting level of public scrutiny and personal attack. While criticism is an inevitable part of academic life, what I have experienced has gone far beyond scholarly disagreement. The relentless accusations, speculation, and public commentary have taken a profound toll on me and on those I love. There comes a point when the personal cost becomes too great." My heart goes out to his loved ones. None of them deserve this.
Jason Arday lied about his credentials. Trump is a paedophile. Boris Johnson had wine and cheese parties in the middle of a global pandemic. You lie about being 6 foot on dating apps. Like, the level of outrage that people have over Jason Arday potentially fabricating some of his resume is completely disproportional compared to how other white men are treated and get away with much, much worse with hard evidence. And if you can't show even any level of empathy for a man that just took his own life and his family who are having to deal with the aftermath of that, it says more about you than it does him. It's not even relevant. This man was hounded by the press, by online trolls. He experienced disgusting racism all in the last few days of his life. And you're talking about some lies that he could have told. Who gives a fuck? This is a human life. A human life was lost. Not because he lied, not because he exaggerated, but because people are disgustingly racist and love to take down a black man. That is the story here.
If you want to blame someone for the death of Jason Arday, first of all, blame him. He's the one who lied. He's the one who caused this situation. And it's very sad, you know, no one deserves to take their own life. It's clear he couldn't live with the consequences of his own actions. But if you really want to blame someone else, because I'm seeing comments like, look what the right did to him, they bullied him to taking his own life, blame the left. The left who put him on a pedestal, the left who made him believe that lying was okay and that putting him in a position that he could not handle and that he was not qualified for was a good idea. Because this is what happens. You encourage people to lie and be put into places where they are not capable of being and they are not qualified of being in this place. And then when the consequences come, because he lied and he takes his own life, then you try and blame the right. No, the right wouldn't have put him in this position. All the right did was call him out rightfully for lying, and he couldn't take the consequences. But again, I'll be very clear, it's very sad that someone has had to lose their life because they lied and they couldn't live with the consequences of their own actions.
People keep saying if Jason Arday was white, he would not have been forced to resign his position as a professor at Cambridge because of plagiarism accusations. They keep saying that if Jason Arday was white, he would not have been hounded by the media because of those plagiarism accusations. And guess what? Let me tell you about the story of William O'Reilly, who's also a Cambridge professor, who just 3 years ago was found to have plagiarized more than 12 pages of text, lifted word for word from essays that 2 of his different students wrote, essays which he had commended and then took as his own, published in an academic journal, passed off as his own writing. In 2021 was when one of the students initially discovered this had happened. It took 2 years for the university to take this through a tribunal process, and guess what they deemed at the end of it? They said at the end of that tribunal process that William O'Reilly had accidentally plagiarized. Oopsie, he said he had placed those 12 pages of text from 2 students' essays as merely a placeholder in his journal article draft, and then, oops, published it, taking all of the credit for it. Where was the media fanfare? Where was the media frenzy? Where was the intense scrutiny into not just his professional and public life, but his personal life? Much of the suffering that Jason endured was at the hands or instigated by the hands of this guy, who was a Cambridge professor until he was fired by Cambridge in 2024 for a blog post in which he said that if we lived in a meritocracy, there'd be even fewer black professors. 1.1% of the UK's professors are black. Out of the 6,180 professors at Cambridge, 75 are black. I went to medical school at Cambridge. I am the child of factory workers. I can attest that Cambridge and other elite institutions that I have studied at are not safe spaces for people of colour, let alone black people. So the news today that this media lynching ended in Jason Arday's death is not even surprising to me. It is a gut punch. It is sickening. It's stunning, but it's not a surprise. And that's another heartbreak all its own.
Okay, so I want to say rest in peace to him, but I don't think everyone can rest in peace when the way that you leave the earth, if there's an injustice towards you. And I mean, it's getting a lot of mixed reactions from the public, but a lot of people are angry about it. And I want to know in the comments section, have any of you ever been in a position of power where you climbed up the corporate ladder in any type of way? And it doesn't even have to be corporate. It can be anything where you overcame something and you got in a higher position than someone. Did people bully you? Did they say smart things to you? Did they try to keep you from making good money? Did they lie on you and try to create a smear campaign against you? Did this happen to you? Was it within your race or other people not within your race that did this to you? Let us know in the comments section, okay? Because this is a very real thing. We've seen things like this happen right here in America. So it's disgusting that this happened. He was just 41 years old. And I remember when he made the news for making history. Now he's no longer here days after resigning because, like many people feel, it was a smear campaign against him. And I want to know, how do you feel about this? I just wanted to share this story with you. This is horrible. This is disgusting. And it shouldn't have happened, what ended up happening to him. Okay. Clearly it was too much to bear, too much to bear. And like I said, how do we know someone wasn't emailing him or calling him on his phone or saying things? It's always more to the story that the public doesn't know, of things that happen behind the scenes. I don't know, maybe he didn't know what else he was going to do after this happened, how, this affects his livelihood and making money and all of what he accomplished and how he climbed to the top, and something taken from you that you accomplished and really affecting your life, your livelihood, your career, your reputation, your dignity, and everything like that. So this is just a doggone shame. And I know what it's like to be bullied on the workplace. That happened to me before. And I actually literally cried in the car And I don't cry easily at all, baby. That just doesn't happen for me like that. But it was so overwhelming because it was a group. So I can understand and have empathy to understand that. And just feeling like a nightmare, like I've done all this, I made it to the top, all of what I accomplished, and then it's just ripped from me, and people are lying on me or saying I did this and that, taking away my dignity, not being maybe taken seriously as a professional. So this is very serious. So hopefully there's still more of some sort of investigation, in my opinion, about this. So rest in peace to Jason, and let us all know what you think in the comments section. Again, if you have ever experienced anything like this, let everybody know in the comment section your story. Okay? So you all take care. Thank you so much. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell for all notifications, and I'll be talking to you all later.